little more on getting around Unreal Engine here and, how to navigate it, where things are, and how to utilize them for this project and pretty much any project essentially. So again, we talked about navigation here. We've got our Alt and right, left, or mouse button for your panning and whatnot. And I showed you another video how to invert your pan if it's backwards. It drives me up the wall, but that's up to you. I know some people who say they prefer it, but going between Max, Maya, and whatever else that all do it the correct way, and Unreal being backwards, it just drives me crazy. So yeah, it's funny. I don't mind hotkey changes, but when the viewport starts going the other direction, I feel disconcerted. So once you've got your level up and that level we're starting with, you're going to notice there's multiple pieces to it. We've got a sunlight going and settings that's in here. We've got some it's bounce lighting, essentially a skylight happening. I think this is the atmospheric fog. Got a chrome sphere, which is basically for creating reflections and bouncing stuff. I've actually got a player start, so you can play this, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. And just a box to get going with. So let's hit play if you want. And what you're going to do is you're going to drop into gameplay mode. So once you're in a gameplay mode, you've got to use the typical game hotkeys. You may have to just right click or just click on the screen just to get it working first. So just right click, and then you're going to notice you've got the ability to play. Now the thing is when it's set up like this, you'll notice that I can move up, but there's no gravity set up and whatnot. So it's kind of in gameplay mode. I can't go down through the floor, but I'm kind of in God mode as well at the same time. There's no extra stuff happening here. Well, we're going to set that up, and we're going to import characters and stuff as we move forward with this to be able to check it out. But so you can see that you can get around it. I'm just going to hit escape, or you can go do whatever you want to get out. But escape's the easiest way, and you're back to your typical viewport here. So down your left-hand side, you've got a bunch of stuff you can get to, recently placed, but basic things. So if you want, for instance, a cube in the scene, you can drag and drop it and drop the cube. Now, something to note when you drop stuff, if I were to go and add a sphere in now, you'll see it kind of stepping. It automatically tries to snap to surfaces. So where you place pivots in 3ds Max when you're making assets is important because it'll make your life easier because it'll make sure things will sit on top of one another, in the right places and automatically snap to wherever the pivot should be, sort of thing, and not just some random location. So we're going to make sure that we're setting pivots as we go. So we can drag and drop items in. You've got more lights. For instance, you can drop in a point light or whatever. And again, once you've got that picked, you've got all the settings here that you can work with. You can just click and drag on them and to be able to drag things. You can open up these drop-down menus, working on, playing with colors. So if you want to add color to your light or whatever, we can. To be able to set it in the mood that we're looking for. We're going to get further into lighting down the road, so don't panic on that one. When we get there, we'll have more to do with how to set up lighting and everything, and concerns and issues with it. So a bunch of objects, you've got all the light types under lights, cinematic stuff, visual effects, geometry. So you've got things like stairs. And some of this stuff would be worthwhile just to kind of use as roughing out a set if you want, if you're not quite sure what you want. And you can go ahead and do this. So there is the move, but there is, of course, rotate, and there is scale. So you can scale things up and down. And right now it's all snapping, as you can see. So let's take a look at the snap and the move tools and everything. So WER, just like in Max or Maya. And so you've got move, rotate, and scale right here across the upper right-hand corner of your viewport. Right now you can see that the pivot, I rotated this object and the pivot isn't aligned to it. That's this button here. You can put it into local or world rotation, so that can be really handy, to be able to snap back and forth between those two. The hotkey is the control tilde key, or the one just above the tab button, so control snap between those. I use that all the time. So then the next three here are your snap settings effectively. So the first one's position snap. So if I turn it off, you can see now I'm not bouncing and snapping between things. Now snap can be really handy when you're laying up games and they're based on grid systems and whatnot, and be able to snap things to whatever you're snapping to. So the snap sizes, as well as some other snap settings, surface snapping and whatnot. So if we turn on surface snap, and I guess it automatically does it. I'm trying to think what that did again now different. I'm trying to remember. Anyways, um, and then there's a snap to sort of rotate. Let's see if that actually does that. I can't remember now. I thought it was supposed to. No, it doesn't seem to be. Okay, well, I'm losing my mind, but that's okay. I do that often. So you can turn your snap on and off here. Okay. Angle snap as well. You might get frustrated because you're trying to get some in between spot. Turn it off here. And of course, scale snap as well. And then we add the camera move speed when you're using the typical game hotkeys. It'll change up the speed that you're moving in. You know, it's up to you how fast you need at any given time. Over in the left-hand corner, we've got some more tools. So drop-down menu, show frames per second, Control-Shift-H is handy. It'll tell you how fast your scene is going. You really do need to change it, check it once you hit play, okay, which is Alt-P, and we're going to make sure that we stay in the 120 frame a second realm. We don't, if your scene is starting to crawl down at 30, 40 frames a second, it's unusable in production. We need levels that are going fast, really, really fast, because once all the gameplay mechanics start being added, it will slow things down. So your assets alone need to be going as fast as possible. So I almost always keep that on just because I want to know what the speed is and if I've just done something to the scene that's killed my frame rate. You know, that can be a huge problem, right? A few other things like field of view. You can save bookmarks to go back to them in your viewport and whatnot. Another one that's really good is high resolution screenshot. Click on it, set it to 2 to double the size so you get better anti-aliasing. Screenshot it. It'll open this at the bottom. It's saved into the project. And there it is. It's done this high-res screenshot. So you can get high-res screenshots out of it really quick. Yeah, it's like rendering, but instantly. It's lovely. Under perspective, you've got different viewports. So we could go to a top viewport, for instance, you know, a left viewport, whatever we're looking for. If we need something like that to be able to move things around in a planar fashion or whatever, pop back to perspective. Next door is lit, unlit, and these are handy. So we've got Alt, was it 1, 2, 3, 4? Maybe it's not 1, 5, 6, 7. I think gets you something. 8, and I don't think 9 does, but 0 does for whatever reason. So what we've got then is, you know, the unlit, which gets you an unlit version. This can be handy if you're working on levels and you've got really dramatic lighting in it. You can't see what the hell you're doing. Just you know, go to the unlit version. Okay, so that's Alt 3 and go to the unlit version. So the wireframe, if you need to see the wireframe, the problem is there's no wireframe overlay, you know, sort of version in here, so it can get pretty ugly when you've got a lot of stuff going on inside there. But I do use the unlit a lot, the Alt 4 for the lit. When you go to detail lighting, you'll be able to see, you know, the lighting and then the lighting only. I can't quite remember the difference between those. Again, I'd have to go back and look. Renders a scene with detailed lighting only. So, okay. Scene lights only. I don't remember what the difference is now. I'll have to try and remember that. And then there's a few others. There's light complexity. So if you go underneath optimization view modes, you've got 7, 0, and 8. So 7 is light complexity, and this is going to be an important one for us to get back to. It actually tells us where our scene's slowing down. Green is good, red is bad, and you'll have to do some testing in this to understand whether or not, where your slowdowns are, whether or not your lighting's a problem. Alt 0 is light map density. We're going to get to that, but again, very important to be able to check out. And shader complexity. This will tell you those materials that you're going to be creating and placing on things. How complex are they? Good green. Pinky colors really bad. Even red's bad. We're trying to avoid bad, and that's going to be speed slowdowns, and we don't want it slowing down. You can turn certain things on and off, like the grid and fog and decals. So you don't have to necessarily go hide things. You can just tell it what it's going to show, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you can turn on and off and everything. So take a look at those menu systems there. Let's see. We won't worry about anything across the top here. So the other one that's going to be real important for you to keep organized is this is going to become an absolute mess. Just like you've been making a bloody mess in Max, stop now, okay, and start optimizing things as you move along. Because if you don't, you're going to run into all kinds of problems later down the road. So we want to optimize this kind of stuff. So from within here, we can be creating things like folders. So I could call this lights, and I can easily then go and take all my lights and drop them into there so that all of my lighting stuff can be found and managed really easily. Of course, if I just click on it again right away, I can go and rename lights so I know what they are. So if I were you, I would be making sure you keep these sorts of things organized in your scene, or else this list will be just massive. That, of course, goes for naming conventions. If you don't name things, I remove grades. None of these things are named correctly. Just because Unreal Engine named them that way doesn't mean you have to leave them that way. So you must go in and rename things. So if I were you, I'd make sure you start putting together some folders that are specific to your scenes. Maybe I'll even outline what they should be, so that when you start migrating scenes together, you haven't got a bloody mess in the fourth semester, right? So make sure you're going in here and working this. Search is excellent because you can just type on lights or whatever, and you'll get all the lights in the scene, which is really, really handy. Use the searches. The searches exist everywhere in Unreal. You can see search paths everywhere, and it's fantastic because you can just search for anything anywhere all the time, which is really, really handy. Use selected only. I'm trying to think what else there is here specifically. And then just details. Make sure you start checking out these details. The list is long for a lot of these things, and a lot of it's necessary, but we're going to have to start learning where some of this stuff is. In another video, we're going to start discussing what static, stationary, and movable are, because those are very important for us to be able to build a video game. Down below, import buttons. So we discussed importing in previous ones. We've also add new what kind of thing do you want to add? Well, there's all kinds of classes of things you can add. Generally, you're probably creating a new folder or whatever, then importing things or creating a new game level. Again, make sure they go into the correct folders and make sure they're named correctly. Even if they're things I don't need, make sure they're named correctly. So if I see a mess, then I will remove grades, is what it boils down to. And of course, save, Control-Shift-S always to save everything, saving your levels, saving your assets, saving everything into it. And again, I always make sure that I show this extra system here of folders so I can navigate it quickly. Either that or you find yourself kind of going back and forth the Mac way and trying to get out and back into a folder system and wondering where the hell you are. So I always have this open so I can just go straight to it and I know where I'm trying to get to. And again, you can search for things. Careful with this. I've had cases where I've got something searching for in here and nothing shows up, and I go, hey, I swear I've got something in wood, yet there's something in the search filter and it's filtering out. So you can also search for specific things and put on these checkbox filters as well. So both those help. few options down in the bottom right hand corner. This, oh, thumbnail size, so you can actually increase if you want to be able to see. I tend to use that a fair bit. Or whether or not you want to see it in lists or columns or rows or tiles or whatever you're looking for, so that you can see these better. So I tend to make them larger. Sometimes, and other times there's so many of them that it just gets hellish looking at them. I've got my scene up here, and if you start looking at materials, it starts becoming difficult to see them all. I might want to make them smaller, but at that point, the words start becoming small and hard to read. So I use this a fair bit, up and down. Okay, well, there you go. Let's get to work.